Welcome to Little Warriors, the podcast. I'm your host, Rebecca Horan, and on episode 4, I'm talking to the feeding therapist, Teresa Foley, who is a paediatric occupational therapist and feeding expert. But before we get into it, thanks to Loopy Loo by Lidl for supporting Little Warriors. I never miss an opportunity to get into Lidl to stock up for so many bits for my kids, especially because my youngest is still in their Loopy Loo nappies and they've got the Loopy Loo biodegradable water wipes and the pants right up to size 7 as well. And do make sure to keep an eye on the Lidl Plus app for regular offers on the Loopy Loo range. I also have to mention that Lidl have the award-winning Loopy Loo Play Kitchen coming into stores on Monday the 13th of October. It's wooden, it's recommended for children 3 and over. There's an oven with a light, an integrated microwave, extractor hood with light, sound effects. There's loads of little bits that come with it, a 24-piece set. A reminder, that Play Kitchen is in stores in Lidl from Monday the 13th of October. And thanks again to Loopy Loo by Lidl for supporting the podcast. On this episode of Little Warriors, I have Teresa Foley. Welcome, occupational therapist and feeding expert, and also AKA, because it's really important to give out people's handles, the feeding therapist on Instagram. What a title.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Yeah,
To be here.
Thank you for coming in. It's a chat I've wanted to have, and I think it's different to even the chats I've had with nutritionists and dietitians. But I love that, the feeding expert and the feeding therapist. It makes it all sound a little bit nicer because feeding is such a minefield and can be a little bit toxic when we're talking about our children, yeah?
It's very complex.
Yes.
It's very individualized to the child, to the family that they're growing up in,
Yeah.
to all of the culture and beliefs that we have as parents and as families around food, the beliefs that we've grown up with ourselves
cultures
as
and
parents.
beliefs, yeah.
There's so many things to unpack. And that's before we even
You mean
consider...
hang-ups, hangovers from it all? You think, so what is it? He gets it from you and your partner? It's just come from...
I think it's how we're wired.
Okay.
And absolutely our environment plays a role in that also.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely we can support parents to create positive changes, maybe some tweaks, maybe environmental setups and things like that. But ultimately, it is not all to fall on the parents' shoulders.
But I kind of love, okay, I love that you've taken the shame, blame and guilt out of it. But I also love that you're like, we're wired a certain way. Because I think with parenting, it's like, how do we change our child and rewire our child? And why aren't they more active, or why aren't they more sociable? Or, you know, we did this a lot with Dr. Rebecca Quinn. We are what we are. And I was saying one of my children is definitely fussy. And then my other child is like super adventurous, right? Mm-hmm. But I don't pit the one off the other and go, look, she ate all of her dinner. And I kind of just... I deal with each issue because I've had to learn that way, right?
Exactly.
But even the same way that they play or sleep or all of these things. But my God, Teresa, we weren't brought up with that parenting of a child with their individual needs, were we?
No, I definitely think there's been a huge generational shift. And this is something that parents talk to me about a lot in my clinic, is probably the messages that we were raised with ourselves around food. And I guess, again, if you think back to the generational perspective, our parents were probably raised in a time when food was scarce. Maybe money for food was scarce.
So it's a scarcity thing, and there was a lot of like, please eat, you're so lucky.
Exactly. And this is it. This is the food for the day. So, you know, I think we then have been raised with very different messages to perhaps the messages I would want to pass on to my children around food. But ultimately, you know, it's about finding what works for you and your family. If you're a family of people who mostly live off beige carbohydrates and you guys are happy with that and everyone is well fed and that works for you, that's okay. If you're a family of grazers and snackers and everyone is well nourished and that's working for you, that's okay.
Wow.
If you're a family of perhaps some neurodiverse children and you end up cooking 2 or 3 different meals every night, and if you're okay with that and if that's working for you, then just go with that.
Teresa, I love your approach, and I think loads of people listening will. There's a less obsessive, finite, detailed approach to like, this is how you're saying. It shouldn't be a regimented, obsessive meal times. It should be what is working, filling up their cup, making sure that they can actually learn and play and enjoy life and they're not miserable and hungry.
Exactly.
But what is causing family tension and stress is the forcing of the scarcity thing is a fascinating topic, and like we won't spend loads of time on it, but we know it leads to disordered eating in some people because it's either they are very restrictive with their eating because they're like, you shouldn't, gorge,
Yeah.
or they do binge because they didn't ever have enough. So there's this
Exactly.
horrible line of that. And I do remember growing up and being like, please finish your Sunday dinner, eat it all. And you were talking about even having a plate of mashed potato. That's very overwhelming for a little kid.
And I have such a vivid memory myself as a child of, trying to get through this plate of mashed potato with my dinner because I was told the dessert was waiting for me afterwards once I had eaten my dinner. And so as an occupational therapist now, I am very focused on supporting children to tune into their internal bodily cues. So a lot of the work that I support children with is like focusing on their hunger cues, focusing on that lovely feeling if their belly is full. You know, that feeling in your tummy that you have when you've had a really big dinner or roast dinner and you think, oh, I'm stuffed.
Content, not pukey, not
Exactly.
like, God, I've eaten too much. Like, content, I'm good for the moment.
Yeah, but some children and some adults struggle to tune into those bodily signals. And again, if you're more focused on the cognitive piece, oh God, I can't eat that much now or whatever, you're possibly less likely to tune into how your body feels.
Is it wrong to say to a child, I have a child who will eat and eat and she's a great appetite and she's super healthy eater, but will then have dinner and I will feel she's full because I'm like, that's a good dinner. And we'll then go and eat an apple or a cracker and we'll continue wanting and looking for. Is it wrong? And I know we don't want to shame parents to say, look, you're full, you're done. Or is it okay to say, look, why don't you give it a while and come back and see if it's what is correct in that whole realm? Because I'm a devil for saying, you're grand, you've just had dinner. And I'm like, oh.
So one thing that I want to tell you about, first of all, is that a lot of children and parents that I work with will say to me, my child eats all the time. They spend their day snacking and grazing and back and forth to the cupboard, but they're always looking for food and I never feel like they're full. And as a parent of 3 prolific snackers, I know how annoying that is because I feel like I just spend my days catering to these children.
And your money.
Yes, snacks are really expensive. God. Anyway, we have evidence to show that if your child is able to sit and eat some form of meal at least 3 times a day, and then if they have snacks in addition to that, that's okay. But the child who is able to sit and eat some type of meal, they will actually end up taking in more food and more nutrition than the child who kind of just snacks and grazes all day long. The child who's up and down and coming and going. It's really interesting because...
So it's very positive, actually, if they have a full meal and then they look for something. It's not that they're kind of being greedy. It's that they're actually able to retain more nourishment. Or...
Yeah, and also like it's okay to, I do try and move away from judgment language around food. We were talking about like when our kids say yuck or puke and it's so annoying and so frustrating to hear those things. I try and turn that on its head with children and I say, okay, let's think about how your body feels at the moment. I wonder if your tummy feels full, because if your tummy feels full, that is totally fine. If your tummy still feels like it's hungry, then that's okay, you can tell me. And if you don't feel like eating right now, the great thing about eating is there's always another opportunity to eat again later.
But Teresa, that's learnings. Like I've had to really grow out of how I raised my first. God, and with girls, it's a minefield because you don't want to be like, ooh, you've had a lot, or ooh, because I think there's a lot of shame in and boys as well. I know boys as well, but I'm raising 2 girls and it's a fragile area. But it's funny with the second, if she sits down and looks at the shepherd's pie or looks at the fish pie and she goes, I go, okay, cool, come back in a while. But that has been a lot of work on myself to go stop force feeding your child. Like, and it annoys me because I'm like, I've made the thing, but I now go, I breathe and I go, grand, see how you're feeling and come back. But that's a lot of like, that's not that easy to do when you've prepared a meal.
Oh, it's really
meal times at 6. You want them in bed by 7:30.
Of course you do. And possibly you've just come in from work yourself.
Yeah, and you're tired.
And so dinner times, I think all of us as parents and as clinicians and all the rest, we tend to place a lot of emphasis on dinner. Dinner. I don't know what it is about
Irish,
dinner, but it is,
isn't it?
It is very Irish. Maybe it's other cultures too. I don't know.
No,
but we place
obsessed.
all of our value on dinner
because actually they're feeding a lot. Their morning, like I give mine eggs. They have big lunches in school. Like they are feeding a lot throughout that day.
Exactly. And so if you think about, say for example, if I think our kids are similar ages. Like mine are 8, 6, and 2. So my kids by 6 o'clock in the evening, if they're maybe going to bed at 8, that's like me saying to you at like possibly 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, now Rebecca, sit down and have your main meal of the day. I want you to concentrate really well. I want you to sit in your seat. We are we're putting a lot of pressure on these little people who've already done their day at school. They've possibly done after school activities, extracurriculars. Maybe they've had a little fight with their friends. Maybe they're a little bit emotionally overwhelmed. And also we as the caregiver and the person who's feeding the child, we also are possibly a little bit overwhelmed at that stage in the day. Like I know myself at 6 o'clock in the evening, I'm, trying to get dinner ready. Everyone's a little bit louder. Maybe I've had a busy day at work. So possibly my nervous system is not at its most regulated either.
Yeah.
So actually now my mantra is I just go with a good enough dinner.
God, I kind of, right. You're changing things that I think I even have right and I definitely don't. It's kind of like an upside down pyramid or triangle, right?
An inverted triangle.
Okay.
Yes.
So what you're saying is, and this is something I've been working on because I feel like when they eat more, they're less, I'm not going to use cranky, but they're less upset going in school. They're actually happier. So there's like, we do a smoothie, we throw in a veg if we can, but they want the banana, strawberry vibes.
Yeah.
Egg, bread, right, whatever. You're saying if they're getting their fill, much like adults in the morning, and then they're having like their apple or their snack or popcorn, they're having a hot meal in school, they might come home looking for a sandwich. They don't need to be eating a steak, potato dinner, right? At like you're saying, our time 8:30, because that's really overwhelming.
And it's a lot.
Oh my God, that's so good.
It really is. And
now I'm seeing it, I'm like, you're correct. I need to, and even lessening the portion maybe, and giving and letting them have a little bit, and then going, you know what, we'll come back in a while. Oh God, I love this.
Or starting with a small portion and letting the child know that if they still feel hungry, they can just ask you for some more.
Do we change the culture of mealtime? So if you're thinking about me, I just said to you, like I had Maltesers and an orange last night because cooker broke. The puppy's being trained. I was trying to get upstairs. I was sneaking. So I grabbed what was in the fridge. Not healthy at all. That's fine. Complete one off and these things happen. But do we change the culture of that mealtime where dinner is maybe a sandwich or it's soup or it's fruit salad? Is it that maybe we are doing this very old Irish, it's very intrinsically linked in our minds to have this big hot meal?
I think, firstly, of course, the first thing that we need to consider is that the child is nutritionally stable, that they're getting adequate nutrition, they're getting adequate calories. I mean, that they're growing, their height and weight are tracking, all of those things. That always needs to be our priority. If you have the knowledge and the confidence that the child is growing well, they're adequately nourished, then you are looking at things like the mealtime environment, mealtime routines. And again, looking back to the scientific evidence, we now know that if you think about the benefit of family mealtimes, so you're thinking, we again place all of our emphasis on the dinner and we almost sit down
She's
together.
Completely mind blown me there.
Share our stories from the day, and we need to come together, and it's so precious, and we must sit down and have this very lovely family dinner. In a lot of homes, that is not the case. Definitely not midweek. But the really good thing to know is that family mealtimes do not have to be dinner. So you will get the same benefits from eating together as a family at breakfast, maybe brunch on a Sunday. And the other side of it is, again, I think we all think that it must be a beautifully home-cooked roast dinner to have these benefits. You will get the same benefits from eating a frozen pizza with your children.
It's just being together, right?
It is the connection piece.
And then seeing you eating and not just picking. And it's like monkey see, monkey do. Mom's eating.
There's so many opportunities for modeling, learning about food. So even if your child is primarily eating beige carbohydrates, if you were sitting beside them possibly eating something like, a stew or a fruit salad, whatever it is, they are still learning about the food by watching you eat it.
But I think it was also that great keynote, like if you have to present something to a child, I think it's 20 times something before they start to really get it. Like you can't go, my child doesn't actually eat meat. And it's like, well, how many times have you offered her? Well, twice and she wouldn't eat it. Well, it's like, keep at it, like keep trying. And I do a lot of with my girls, because I wouldn't be a big hot meal maker, but I do a lot of the tapas dish where it's a number of things, right? And they pick and choose and colours of the rainbow, actually really to get a veg into them. So I'm like, if I cut up the carrot sticks cold and there's a dressing on it, great. I do a lot of that and in that attempt. But it's really funny. You're right, like that pizza Friday or the odd time we get a takeaway, or, mornings for me are precious because now I have a bit more time in the morning just talking to them about their day. And I feel like you've completely rewired me on this obsession with my dinner. Why is my husband not home? We're not sitting together. We're not like that good family, because we have separated families, single, parent families blended now. We've grannies at home doing dinner. We've minders. We've people who work night shifts in hospital. This obsession with seeing things on TV where everyone's sitting together every night, it's not reality.
I think absolutely in modern society, it's very difficult to achieve that. But most of us probably could work towards achieving it once a week.
Or once a day if you're doing a morning or
possibly once a day might, for some families, that might be a little bit ambitious, but definitely once a week. I think that is realistic. And that does not, again, that can just be Sunday morning pancakes together. Yeah. The pancakes don't need to be homemade. I
love this.
They can be your super value pancakes that are bought, and the kids help you decorate
and
them.
Do banana and strawberries with it.
And the sprinkles and the yogurt and the chocolate sauce. That is as beneficial.
Getting your children to cook with you is also really positive.
It's really positive. Okay. Again, I go with a low pressure approach to everything in my feeding work. So if your child is a little bit anxious about new foods, a little bit anxious about perhaps the texture of the food, a lot of children, if you try and encourage them to come and cook with you or bake with you, they do have this apprehension that you're going to make them eat it.
Oh, yes.
You know, and I think a lot of us do kind of maybe try and jump in with, just try it. So just give it a go. You'll like it.
Yeah.
Those little throwaway remarks, like just one more bite, you just try it, just give it a go. They are really damaging.
They're triggering.
Now, we've all, as a mother, I can say I have said those things so many times. But again, thinking back to the low pressure approach, easy breezy, nice and calm.
So interesting, Teresa. I'm thinking about everything I do. Even like, why didn't you finish the egg this morning, and how I think that I'm doing so well. And in certain areas, I'm sure I am, you know, even with my phone modeling, like when I'm getting them ready for bed, putting them down, phone out of the room, because I used to do my emails, things that I'm doing to try and improve. But 100%, you know, that feeling of watching you prepare something, it doesn't often encourage you to eat it, because sometimes it's a bit gross to them, the batter, and then... And here you are going, why didn't you eat the pancake you made? It's like, oh.
And even if you take that a step further, you know, lots of parents, again, I'm sure I've said this myself, will say, but I made this especially for you.
Oh my God.
I made this for you. Why won't you eat it?
Why didn't you like your Christmas present? It's really hard. All of this is hard, but I think we're navigating it all. Like, you work as an occupational therapist. Mm-hmm. You were saying to me there, and you know, if you follow her page, The Feeding Therapist, it's excellent. But you work a lot, which I think is fascinating, because it's something I'd missed, neurodiversity in that area in supporting parents feeding their children. And I said to you, the funny thing that we obsess about is if your child is neurodivergent, you're thinking of how they socialize, how they're going to learn, will they get a job, are they doing okay in themselves? I didn't even think about that area.
The food piece with children who are neurodiverse is massive.
Mm-hmm. I never knew this.
It's huge.
Just so ignorant.
And it's very difficult. It's very complex. And I will even go so far as to say it can be traumatic for a lot of families. So actually now the latest evidence again tells us that 89% of autistic people will present with some form of eating differences. So actually, if you have met an autistic person, chances are they do have some type of eating difficulty / challenges / differences.
Why is talk to me about, is it because the brain is working so hard in a different area that this ain't a priority, or is that simplifying it?
Again, it can be down to many different things. A really big part of eating challenges and eating differences is down to sensory processing. So eating for all human beings is the most complex sensory experience that we engage in. Yeah, because if you think about it, you know, eating is I always say eating is so much more than the food. So if you are eating food or even preparing food, there's a lot of strong smells. There can be a lot of different appearances of food. Food can look very different on the outside to how it looks on the inside. So if you think about something like even just something as simple as a chicken dipper, it's brown on the outside, it's white on the inside. So it's very confusing if you look at something that is dry, breaded, beige, brown on the outside, and then you bite into it or cut into it, and it's an entirely different texture on the inside. Then there is actually the sound of food, the feeling of food. You know, is food squishy? Is it soft? Is it hard? Is it crunchy? Food can, if you think about like fruit, for example, it's changed a lot in the last month. I know from my own kids, like strawberries are tasting different now. Peaches are not as sweet as they were. So autistic children tend to like things that are predictable, safe. There's no surprises. They like to know what's coming next.
So we know when we have a piece of fruit, I'll go, that was a bad orange.
Exactly.
Or that grape is, and you're correct, like a dipper or something that isn't even that cooked that well. That surprise or element of like ick or yuck, for them is not fun, right? That's not, like for us, we're like, we'll just discard it or we'll cut that rotten piece off the apple.
Okay. So our nervous system and our sensory system, you may kind of have a momentary go, oh, I didn't like that one.
You get over
I'll
it.
just move on.
Yeah.
But to an autistic person or neurodiverse person whose sensory system is possibly very anxious and hyper alert already to food, they can have a very, very big response to something like that. And possibly something as simple as biting into a blueberry or a strawberry that doesn't taste the way we expected it to can cause that child so much surprise and overwhelm and disgust that sometimes they won't be able to eat
So
that
it's kind
food
of,
again.
it's visceral, like they have a
It
meatball
really
and it's
is.
just really not a funky meatball, or
Yeah. Or it's
that's
just not how they
off-putting for the
expected.
whole, wow.
And that can trigger the child to drop that food.
Completely from their food types.
Absolutely. And you see, the really worrying part then for parents is that if your child already eats a restricted diet, so maybe they eat less than 10 foods already, and then they decide, okay, actually, my body doesn't feel able to eat that fruit at the moment. Then if they drop a food, then they're possibly down to 8 or 9 foods in total. So that can be really scary for parents. When parents come to me, I always just meet with the parents first and we sit down and we have a really long conversation, and they talk to me about their fears, their anxiety around their child's eating, possibly the shame, possibly the guilt, the trauma. I always say to parents, eating brings up a lot of tricky emotions.
Yes.
Brings up tricky emotions for the child, but also for the parents.
Of course it does. It stems from childhood, friendship groups, dating, going on a dinner date and something unexpected happens. Maybe times that you had disordered feelings towards your body as a woman, as a man, someone who maybe trained and they had to carb load. Like all of it is a minefield.
Absolutely.
And even the word treat, like we'll have a treat. It's like this kind of reward system with food. It's so interesting.
It is. And then the other side of it to consider for parents, again, not just the parents of neurodiverse children, but all parents. I go back to the very start and I tell parents, I say, we're going to go back to the day your baby was born. And you might be a little bit surprised by that because parents think that we're just going to talk about what the child is eating now in front of them. But actually, think about it. It's oftentimes if there's feeding challenges there at the very beginning, so maybe the baby struggled to latch, struggled to take a bottle, struggled to gain weight, maybe there was reflux there, maybe there was colic there.
Wow.
Number one, that can all contribute to the child's feeding challenges. But also it can contribute to the parents' trauma, grief. And they'll say things to me like, you know what, we never got up and running with the feeding. Or they'll say like, it was just a nightmare.
Or it was delayed. Or it was...
Or they'll say it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare from the get-go.
Which is already a really big word. Like nightmare is just already saying the whole thing is a dud.
Yeah. And they'll say, we looked for help and we could not find the help. And as parents, I think it's fair to say, we all just want to be able to feed our children well. And if you can't do that, it's very distressing.
Is this a question you can answer with children who are autistic in particular?
Yeah.
Is there findings or research done where they are not meeting their, goals regarding weight and size? Like, is there, because they're more restrictive about what they eat? And I know that this is a loaded question and you have to be careful, but is it that they're really not getting enough nourishment, or is there improvements there?
So it's a huge question, and some autistic children will survive off 5 different types of base carbohydrates. And when we do their nutritional bloods, honestly, their bloods will be better than mine.
Okay.
And so some children can manage to get their full nutrition from quite a restricted diet, which is amazing. Because then I say to the parents, right, well, one less thing to worry about. There are other children who can be quite significantly malnourished, undernourished. And, it can be really tricky then, because then we're looking at things like trying to get supplements, trying to get nutrition into the children within the context of a restricted diet. And that is so stressful for parents. Now, I will say, I have lots of little hacks and tips and tricks and things that over the years I've found, so something as simple as if a child who doesn't like to take their supplements, simply making it up the night before and putting it in the fridge, it tends to be a little bit more palatable.
Is this to do with your work, magical meal times? Is this regarding this? No.
Part of it is.
Okay.
But, they're just certain tips and tricks that I say to parents, I'm not going to be able to have your child eating sushi in 3 months' time, but I might be able to support you and your child to all have a little bit less dread in relation to eating, to possibly support your child to be able to sit and eat a meal with the family. So they're the kind of things that we're working on.
If you have a parent with an autistic kid who is struggling in certain areas, maybe in school or at home, and then there's this other layer of like dinner's going to be a shit show. Dinner's going to be, it must be really hard. Am I right?
It's so
These
stressful.
Poor parents, Teresa.
And you touched on something very important there, the school piece. So eating at school, for lots of children, for my own children, some days the lunchbox comes home or the hot lunch comes home literally
every day lately.
not even opened.
But I'm such an asshole and I've stopped doing it. I'm like, why didn't you? And I'm just like, just not eating it, so move on. And I just put an extra sandwich in or something. But I used to feel very like there's people in the world dying. We cannot do that. It's not our children's fault there's children in the world dying.
And you know what? It's kind of futile anyway, because you can, again, you can come out with those really emotive messages
that your parents gave us, like, there's children. And
it's not really going to make any, all it does is make you more upset.
And them shamed.
So, yeah, exactly. So, but the school piece, particularly for autistic children, is hugely stressful. It's something that I am working with the Department of Education on at the moment. Because if you think about the sensory environment of food and in a classroom in Ireland, all of our children do eat their lunches in the classroom. You know, it's not like other countries where they have like dining halls or cafeterias or whatever. And I can say this as someone who regularly goes into classrooms. If you have, you know, maybe 12 different hot lunch options, so you have your curry, your fish, your spaghetti bolognese, it's really smelly. And the classrooms can be quite small, quite warm. The kids are sitting really close to each other.
God, yeah, I didn't think of any of this.
And if you are somebody whose sensory system is already very highly alert, highly attuned to the smell of other people's food, to the appearance of it, oftentimes the result of that can be that the poor autistic child just does not feel able to eat their own food.
God.
And so I have a lot of children who are coming to me who do not eat at school ever. But
also fascinating, because in a totally different level, I would have always found that smells, and I have a massive sense of smell, which is a massive running joke in our house. I come in the door and I know exactly what's going down, or if the dog is done, like I can smell everything in our home. But I would have always found people's lunch boxes in school really triggering. I just couldn't eat my own lunch because it would put me. I'm very that about textures and foods.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm very everything's visceral and I get fixated on things. But I would also say, would I be correct in saying that time sensitivity and the pressure of mealtime? So say even a kid who isn't autistic, who's just like, I'm going to eat my hot lunch and I'm going to go run around after, and I've got 15 minutes, no big deal. And if you have a child who is feeling under pressure to eat this box, and they know that there's play yard and time, and that must be really stressful too.
Absolutely. And so again, that time pressure goes back to, if you think about it, we want to have a low pressure approach to eating.
And that's not low pressure.
If the child, you know, if you're saying, come on now, you've only got 5 minutes left and then you need to be out to the yard, you need to finish up.
Are you finished? Yeah.
So the child just won't eat then. Then they'll just go, okay, fine, I'll just leave my food there. I'm prioritizing playing over eating. So then they're just not getting the nutrition, the you know, the calories that they need to be able to do their primary job, which the job of a child is to play and learn and interact with their peers. So the time piece is something that I feel very strongly about for all children.
So do I. For all children. Yeah. You work closely with parents. You said you go into schools. You do incredible work. I love this title, feeding expert. For God's sake, we need, if we talk about exercise, the physicality, obesity epidemic in Ireland, all the things that we talk about, we actually just need to get back to bare tax. I wonder, would you agree with the statement, loaded again, why not, that we should be a bit more free-flowing and relaxed and casual, and that, in fact, our obsessive tendencies to restrict treats and sweets can actually lead to our children becoming more into sugar, or the fact that we are pushy about them getting more can lead to them pulling away. That, would you say, and I'm not talking about going and getting your child a Magnum at 8 a.m. before school and loading up on, like, you know, chips but if we were more relaxed in our approach to food and our own hang-ups, it would be better for them?
I think so. Because I think if we can just keep everything balanced, and I say to a lot of parents, all food is good food. Yeah. And yes, of course, we know that something from a takeaway, or, you know, is not going to have the same nutrition in it as an organic
we're not stupid. We know
curry
this.
You know. Yeah. But actually, if we can try and just adopt that food neutrality concept, it's very, very impactful. So if you're a family that really values food that is prepared from scratch, and that if that is something that you can do as a family, eat, you know, home cooked meals from scratch 4 times a week, amazing. I applaud that. But if you're a family who's also relying on processed food 5 nights a week because everyone's working, chances are if your child is able to eat that food, they're probably still going to be nutritionally balanced and stable.
So they're getting a bit of protein, a bit of carbs, maybe some good fats, bad fats. They're getting a lot of stuff.
So what I try and encourage parents to do is to move away from that processed, ultra processed kind of debate that is raging at the moment and think more about food groups. So, think about, is your child having any fruit or vegetables? And that can literally come from something like orange juice. It can come from a smoothie. It can come from a little fruit pot.
Teresa, people go, obesity epidemic in the world. We're out of control. Look at our children. 1 in 5 is obese. Orange juice will kill you. The amount of sugar in a glass of orange juice. I can't believe we used to have that for breakfast. It's like orange juice is heroin now. I'm not joking. Like jellies at parties. It's disgusting. Just give them a homemade muffin. And I swear to God, all of this noise, and I understand that everyone has a voice and everyone is an expert and everyone is out there doing their thing and viral. And
no, that's fair.
It's very confusing for the mum and dad who are sitting at home, or the mom or whoever's raising that kid, to go, what the hell is the truth?
But it's also extremely overwhelming. And you know what I find, myself as a parent, but also parents who are talking to me, people are saying, I don't know what to believe anymore. And again, I think parents are now, people don't trust their own instinct anymore. No. Because we're being bombarded with too many information
and
sources.
I think that message comes in on a ticker tape before I've made the decision. So with the Chris yesterday, she was actually hungry and she'd done a lot of athletics and she just wanted the Chris, and it could have been a bit of, okay, you can have them, but you're going to have them every day. Yeah. Instead, I was just like, bam. And I think it's about slowing down that reaction, like all of the stuff we do with kids regarding discipline, sleep, stuff that I was obsessive about, bath and bedtime. Now I'm like, if the bath ain't working and they're late going to, I'm not going to do it. And it's being flexible, but that's tricky sometimes. Pressure.
It is really tricky. But like you just mentioned there, your daughter had just done athletics. So, I mean, she probably had, her body was really busy. She'd been really active. Chances are the crisps would have been fine in that instance. I mean, am I recommending you give them 7 days a week? No.
But that's not what this was. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it's about, as parents, allowing ourselves that moment to go, hang on, it might.
Do you take a lot of shame out of the parents, like when you work with them? Forget about the kid for a sec. Do you kind of go, stop?
I do. Yeah, I do. Oh. I do. But that work can take a long time and there can be a lot of tears, and that's okay. And parents come into me and they say, this really didn't go where I thought it would. I thought you were going to tell me how to add more vegetables to my child's diet. And I say to them, that's the easy part. We will get to that. The bigger piece is the emotional piece.
Because they feel like we've messed up our kid. We ruined our kid. She's never, But
that stuff is the easy part. If we can think about, the connection, the approach, that low pressure approach, the balance, the flexibility, all the other stuff, you will get there with that afterwards.
Can I be a total wreck the head before we wrap this up? Yeah. Can you give us like 5 hacks or tips or 5 groundbreaking, and I'm joking, but like 5 things that we could do if your child is autistic or not autistic regarding food and feeding?
Okay, so the first one, and this probably is to do more with neurodiverse children, but it works for all kids. If your child is struggling to eat, if they're struggling to come to the table, whatever it is, I always say to parents, meet the child where they're at, like literally. So if your child is in another room eating crisps on their own, watching the iPad, then I say, okay, well, can you sit beside them and can you share those crisps with them and can you watch the iPad together? And that is where you start. There's no point in trying to encourage a child to come to the table if they're not motivated to do so. Okay. Next thing is, again, parents, I say to parents, what's your goal? And they say, I want the child to eat more foods. And probably I'd like them to eat Christmas dinner with us this year. And I say, okay, right. And that's a really common goal. And then they'll say, but my child's just eating, chicken dippers and waffles at the moment. So I'm thinking we have a bit of a way to go. So again, going back to meeting your child where they are, look at the food that your child does eat at the moment and try and find the next closest alternative to that. For some children, that will literally just be changing the brand. So, if they're eating one specific brand of potato waffles at the moment, you might go and introduce an alternative. The third one is, we don't ever restrict or take away food ever. Okay. So
this is so scary.
I don't want it to be scary.
No,
I want it to be reassuring.
But it's really important. And I think, thank God you've said all this, because there is a bit of a thank you for saying that.
Yeah. So we never want to take anything away. We always want to provide the child with the food that they're looking for, but we can also offer alternatives. Now, the child might not be ready to have, your beautiful Mediterranean bake or whatever it was on their plate, but are they able to have it in a tiny bowl beside their plate? And again, thinking back to where your child is at the moment. Then kind of the last two that I want to focus on are all about that connection piece, the enjoyment of mealtimes, because probably two of the biggest emotions that I hear from parents are, number one, guilt, but also dread. They say to me, I am just sick of mealtimes. I dread them. I don't know what to feed my child. I'm just anticipating the row before I put the food out on the table. So oftentimes I say, stop. Okay, just stop. How can we think about how can we break this down? What can we do to change that dynamic? Is it going to be that maybe one night a week you guys share a takeaway? Is that the thing that's going to allow you to enjoy food together again? Or is it taking it away from the dinner table altogether and having, a pizza party while watching a movie, having a picnic? I love picnics with my kids in the garden in the summertime. Let them plan the food that you have for the picnic. I mean, yeah, it's probably not going to be your chosen food, but let them put out the food and let them enjoy that together. And the last one, if it's possible, is to get the child involved in preparing food in some way. And again, not to oversimplify, but that doesn't have to be, chopping the veg if they're not ready to do that, or, mixing whatever it is, the sauce if they're not ready for it. It can be something as simple as literally washing the veg, setting the table, reminding their brothers and sisters to wash their hands before dinner. It can be sprinkling grated cheese on top of a pizza, having a family pizza night. The child who's fearful about eating, they can always sprinkle some grated cheese. And then they're happy to make the pizza for everyone else, which is gorgeous.
Teresa, you've actually brought up a lot of emotion in me, because I think with two girls in particular, my hang-ups from youth and everything that I saw around me in all of our restrictive eating as a kid.
It's so complex.
It's really complex.
And it's so emotive.
It is emotive. I'm kind of like, oh my gosh. I know this, and my instincts are, Rebecca, don't say, but you've had 3 bowls of spaghetti. Why do you want a 4th? That questioning, Oh my God,
Just
Teresa
observing.
Foley, you're so brilliant, because also you're making food fun, playful, relaxed, casual, not this obsessive tendency. And what you've done is change my complete mindset on dinners. And that is the one thing I'm going to go home and change, because you're right. I'm doing this whole, what are you not eating? You're massive.
And you know what? The last thing I will say is that oftentimes when parents manage to adopt that low pressure approach and kind of take a hands-off approach for a while, the magic often happens, where you will see the child start to feel more relaxed and then start to become more curious about what others are eating, and possibly be able to adopt more food into their diet.
You're doing vital work, and I know people can reach out if they want to.
Yeah,
the feeding therapist. I found her on Instagram. People had spoken to me about her. You're doing such vital work. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Rebecca.